presentation. So precisely it will be of 1.5 hours. So maybe during this presentation, I'll have breaks to discuss if anybody is having any queries. And apart from that, if you have any specific queries, you can put it in your chat box. I'll keep on looking at the chat box in between and I'll see if I can address. Otherwise, at the end, we'll have some discussion, and during that time, I'll try to answer your questions. So let me share. Okay. So anybody is having any queries, also you can unmute, but that should not be chaotic for others. I understand it is a democratic country, but we should follow and practice and also follow the rules for these online deliberations. So you are welcome to interact, but without disturbing others. Okay. So let me start this session. It is basically an introduction to machine learning. As I go through the list of participants, I find that there are participants, though it is yes, 30% of the participants are from general science, from physics, chemistry, geology, pharmacist. So, keeping them in mind just to for their uh, initial or to help them to begin with this topic. So, this course is on machine learning introduction, and many of you may be familiar to the content of this session. So what I'll be speaking in this session are precisely, first of all, I'll talk about the timeline, what is machine learning and how it is related to other sister specializations. Then I'll be speaking about the challenges, and finally the achievements through different machine learning algorithms. So the outline of my presentation is definition, evolution, and terminology. So today again we talk about many buzzwords. So machine learning is one of those buzzwords, but may not be. It is uh, well taken by all the professionals in the right way. So first I'll try to define it. Then we'll go for through the conventional or popular algorithms of machine learning, their comparative analysis, and at the end I will summarize this, defining the challenges faced by these machine learning algorithms, which again I'll take forward during my second session. Okay. So this one is a simple demonstration to show the or to claim that yes, machine learning has become a topic that is interesting to many of us. On the right side, here I have mentioned four different buzzwords which nowadays many people are searching, and on the left side is the statistics, that is the search rate, particularly in the domain of computers and electronics, and it is the search percentage that shows that how interesting these buzzwords are. So what I have compared between the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and then I have considered also the new buzzword, that is the deep learning. Coming to artificial intelligence. So basically, what I feel, artificial intelligence is the science that uh, particularly considers, or it can be considered as a broader domain that tries to mimic human abilities. It is a science that tries to mimic human intelligence or human ability. So that is why it is called artificial intelligence. Whereas machine learning is one of the tools used for artificial intelligence. But nowadays, again, you see that when you talk about machine learning, in general, people accept it as the artificial intelligence, and these two are words have been used interchangeably. So here in this plot, what I want to show is it is the statistics starting from 2004 till date. So before that, 2004, this artificial intelligence was dominating, and from 2004 onwards, you can see the red line is for machine learning, and this yellow one is for artificial intelligence. People gradually started taking that this machine learning is nothing but the artificial intelligence, or other way around, artificial intelligence is nothing but the machine learning. But artificial intelligence is never restricted to machine learning. It has other components apart from machine learning. So it is a bigger umbrella, bigger concept. Under that, I can take that machine learning is just a tool to support this artificial intelligence. And now from machine learning, next step is deep learning. Machine learning consists of mathematics, computational science, many other ancillary domains. Without statistics, without probabilities, we cannot learn machine learning. There is no shortcut to machine learning. Machine learning definitely is interesting, but it is not an item which can get over in a month or 6 months. Okay, it can again continue lifelong. So under this machine learning, we have many different concepts, which includes the probability, which includes the statistics, which includes the programming, which includes the domain specific knowledge. And it started with statistics, but gradually uh, now we are looking at another aspect of machine learning that is called deep learning, and which is an extension of artificial neural network. And looking at all these things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, wherever the learning comes, precisely learning requires the data. So together all these three, again, we need some data. So I'm keeping this data analysis also as a part of, and all these four things go hand in hand. So here you can see that in terms of search, though in 2004, artificial intelligence and machine learning were comparable and at par, but gradually this machine learning and deep learning is taking the place, and now people are not talking about this artificial intelligence, but they understand that machine learning is the artificial intelligence. Next, there can be also a hierarchical arrangement. So this is about the definitions. So we can define this machine learning as an application of artificial intelligence that provides systems the uh, ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. So as I said, the foundation is the artificial intelligence. So here I have at the um, bottom. So this is the artificial intelligence. And from that, gradually, hierarchically, I can have the machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. So how are they different? When I speak about artificial intelligence, as I said, it can be something beyond machine learning. So basically, the starting point is to deal with or to come up with smart devices leading to automation. So that can be again a sensor technology, not necessarily that it is a learning concept. It can be simple sensor technology. So side by side, we can see that when the machine learning research is going ahead, also we can see that the sensor technology from its basic form, now again we have smart sensors. Sensors are being enabled to take the decision by itself. So the sensor technology is also growing. So this can also strengthen the concept of artificial intelligence. Next comes machine learning. So when we have something to learn, our machine, precisely the computer, need to learn something. So there the requirement comes, that is the data. So without data, there cannot be any machine learning. So machine learning focuses on development of computer programs that can be handled or that can handle data and use it according to the demand or the requirement. So the goal is to extract some pattern from the data, and those patterns can be handled by using some statistical methods or by using some probabilistic method or by having some different kind of learning concept. So when it comes to deal with the data, then that branch of artificial intelligence is the machine learning. Then comes artificial neural network, which is again another subset of machine learning. So in this artificial neural network, it is not only limited to the statistical or the probabilistic concepts, not that linear algebra or only the mathematics and the statistics. Apart from that, the attempt is to mimic the functionality of the biological neural network, how the human beings learn and how they behave intelligently. So when that concept is added up with these statistical methods, that is considered as artificial neural network. So artificial neural network is precisely is a layer architecture, or there are different predefined architectures considered for different applications. And at the top we can see that it is the deep learning. So in this course we'll be considering all of these. It is the machine learning, then we'll be discussing on artificial neural network, then on some sessions we'll be discussing about neural network and the applications related to these domains. So what is deep neural network? It is again another extension of artificial neural network, and structurally it is too deep, very deep as compared to the conventional neural network models. There the challenge comes, that is the computation challenge. Okay, so if the handcrafted patterns are not available from the data, if the patterns are not visible, how to extract the pattern, and the pattern extraction happens automatically, that concept comes under deep learning. So these are the hierarchical arrangement, and here uh, in this course, throughout these 5 days, we'll be discussing about not only machine learning, we'll be discussing about artificial neural network, and also there are sessions to deal with the deep learning, concept of deep learning and applications related to deep learning. Okay. Uh, what you want to tell you this particular slide is machine learning, as I said, is having a very long history. Even before the concept of artificial intelligence came up, or officially it was considered, before that also there were literatures, there were publications saying the concept of machine learning. Okay. So with this long history, we can classify, again, it is my own interpretation, it is not the gospel, or it is not been defined or accepted anywhere else. So it is the concept of having generations of machine learning. So as in communication, we have 1, 2G, 4, 3G, 4G, now it is 5G, we talk about generations. So similarly, in case of machine learning also, we can partition these learning concepts into generation. So sometimes during 1950 to 1975, we can say that it is the concept of automation. The artificial intelligence concept was only for automation. Automation could be by using electromechanical system. Automation could be by using sensors. Automation could be by using any rule set. Okay, so it is to make a device intelligent by having some form of electromechanical system, having some form of sensor, having some set of rules. So there, these are the components I have shown you. It is the sensors which drive some actuators based on some statistical property, based on some rules, and rules again can be derived from domain experience and also with some knowledge of probability. So it is mostly to have intelligent devices. Okay, that is considered as the first generation. So there is no programming, there is no learning. In the second generation of artificial intelligence, we can include the concept of learning, learning of patterns without being explicitly programmed. Okay, so this is the generation where we speak about the term that is the soft computing. So soft computing is towards the learning of patterns, extracting pattern from the data. And there the three components we can see are the artificial neural network, then the fuzzy logic or the rule-based expert system, and finally the evolution theory that is called the genetic algorithm. So all the three can be again put together to have hybrid concepts, but some form of programming. Without programming, it is not only limited to electromechanical system or sensors, it involves some form of programming. So then comes the third generation that is beyond the learning, or here you can say that it is beyond the artificial neural network, and here comes the new concept, or that is the current situation where people are learning what is deep learning. Okay, so how I can differentiate between this deep learning and the conventional learning? In the conventional learning, we expect that the patterns are visible in the data. Only thing is to knit the pattern in a particular way that is more convenient or suitable to get some decision or is easy for analysis. Here in case of deep learning, the difference is the patterns are extracted automatically. That is called more focused towards pattern mining. Okay, and pattern mining is possible through different concepts. So in this again, maybe in the next session I'll show you what are these concepts. So some of these concepts are modularity, completely data driven, and also taking the support of processing speed. So initially there were restrictions with the processor. So till what rate or what can be the processing speed, but gradually now it has been increased. So by having this high-end processor supported by GPU, TPU, now it is possible to have very deep networks and get the patterns extracted without having any involvement. So more kind of automation. So the initially whatever the knowledge domain or the experience was required, that is to set the rule, now that has become little easy. Okay, and next is the 4G. So after deep learning also it is not ending. Now the new concepts have come up which speaks about hybridization of deep models, query based processing. Suppose now I compare this as the programming languages, from machine language, assembly language, high level language, now it is the query based processing. So that is what I have mentioned here. Automation can be concept or compared with the machine language. And next is the pattern learning or the programming that can be compared with assembly language, that is second generation. Then we have high level language, that is the third generation, and finally the SQL query based language, where we need not also go for any expertise in programming. Okay, so there can be again many more extension, many more developments in this domain. So that is again a big question mark. So here in the right side I have summarized, this is the generation of machine learning. So when I speak about learning, so learning can take place in different ways. Okay, like from the birth till the death, we keep on learning different concepts in different ways. Sometimes guided by our teachers, guided by our seniors, sometimes by experiencing the things around us, sometimes again forcibly to do something. Okay, so considering all these aspects, learning can be in this machine learning also can be also considered in three ways: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. So now coming to the supervised. So supervised learning is the concept where we have two phases of learning, that is called the training phase and the testing phase. In the training phase, we try to fix up the model parameters to build the model, for which whatever data we use are called the labeled data. So in case of supervised learning, the data are labeled data. What is the meaning of labeled data? Suppose I get the training phase. In the training phase, I'll have some patterns, the inputs, and these inputs are labeled. Yes, I have the images of cat and they have been labeled as, yes, these are the images of cat. Now comes the test phase. In the test phase, along with this cat category, there can be some images doesn't belong to this category, but these images or these inputs are not labeled. So now the job of this model is to identify these inputs. Suppose these are the cats, these are not cats. So my model has been trained enough to handle all these inputs and say which are the cats and which are not cat. Okay. So here during this training, some form of feedback is given, some form of support is given. So supervised learning is supported by the feedback parameter, which says that whether it is doing well or it is having some error. In general, it is used to identify the objects, it is used to predict the future values. On the other side comes the unsupervised. In unsupervised learning, the inputs are not labeled. They will be clustered depending on some properties or depending on some association among the patterns. Okay. So now with this supervised and unsupervised, which were prevailing for quite a long time, maybe till 1995 or sometimes towards 2000, suddenly this concept of reinforcement learning has come up. And reinforcement learning, and another example of reinforcement learning now, which is also a very wide topic and very much discussed topic, that is the autonomous driving. Okay, so if you talk about autonomous driving and all the gaming applications, they fall under this category, that is the reinforcement learning. So here are the two examples to support this reinforcement learning. So what is reinforcement learning? Do some, that is the action, get some reward for the action, and the target is to maximize this reward. So there will be series of actions. For each of these actions, some reward will be there, and the goal set is to maximize or do something which will have better and better reward. So suppose the cat is sitting, so it is ideal, it will not have any form of reward. Now, if it starts searching its food, it may get some good catch, okay, and that can be considered as the reward for the cat. Here is another example. It can be again a combination of unsupervised partly and the reinforced partly. So here it is a very well set experiment, which is um, which says that in the first here, suppose the chicken bone is shown to a dog. So the dog being associated with or familiar to the food, it may start salivating. Okay. So with this concept, now what happened? Suppose this next action is the bell is put, then the dog may not react towards this bell. So now, if for few days, both the actions will be taken together, first putting the bale and then keeping the chicken bone. The dog will develop the habit to understand that yes, these two are the events which are happening together. So next, if the chicken is removed and only the bale is put, then also the dog may start salivating. So there can be learning based on some combinations of supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. Not that always the learning concept is supervised Always the learning concept is unsupervised or always it is reinforcement. There can be the hybrid concept to consider all the possible learning mechanism and to get the best out of it. So whatever we'll be discussing in the today or maybe in these 4 days or in general in the domain of machine learning, mostly it is in three different categories. We can put it as classification, regression and clustering. So I'll say that classification, regression and clustering. So what are the problems or what are the applications happening or what are the targets set for machine learning can be from one of these fits. So what happens in case of classification? Precisely, the output is a class number. Okay, the output is precisely a class number. That means it is uh, an integer. So I can say that class number means it is an integer. In case of regression, the output can be any real number. Okay, so here is the example of regression. Suppose the straight line fitting. I can define this straight line in terms of its slope and the y-intercept, where the slope and the y-intercept are the two parameters and they can take any value, not necessarily integer values. Now coming to clustering. So in this example, I have taken the example of handwritten digit classification. So though we said that it is a classification, but again it can be considered as the clustering aspect because this only says that which are the digits often confused. So if you look at the data set of handwritten digit, it will say that many times the 3 and 8 are confused. Similarly, 5 and 6 are confused, 0 and 6 are confused, also here 4 and 9 are confused. So depending on the shape, depending on the writing practice or depending on how they appear in the data set, often the parameters or the members from one class get confused with the members of another class. So clustering is to put these possible patterns into different groups and see which are the groups close together and what is the likelihood that one of these member from one group can fall in another group. So what we are discussing again in these three domains to classify the input, to develop a model for classification, to develop a model for regression, to develop a model for clustering. There are many more terminologies. So apart from this learning concept, apart from this classification, regression, and clustering concept, when we come to the model, they design or develop a model, we go through definitely two phases: training and testing. There can be also a validation phase: training, validation, and testing. Okay, so training particularly it is towards updating the parameters. Suppose I want a model, initially I assign some values to the model parameters and there are so many people joining. So training phase is towards to get these parameters updated gradually so that the model performance becomes more and more accurate. Then comes the validation phase. So in this validation phase, the parameters remain as it is, but the input is something which is not used during the training process. So if the validation data are not in the training process, so they are used to check whether we are going in the right direction or not. What is the performance of the model with this new set of data? So it is a kind of interim check. So if the validation is okay and also the performance is in the direction as we get the performance for the training patterns, then the training further continues. If it is not, then again we have to change the model or we have to change the initialization process or we have to change the algorithm and again start the training from the beginning. So once we're satisfied with both the steps, training and validation, then comes the testing phase. So testing phase is to evaluate the model after the end. That is, once I say that my training is over, now we have to test it. And if the model passes for all these three phases, training, validation, and testing, then we can go for deployment of the model. Then comes the bias and overfit. There are also the terms which we talk about the bias and overfit. So sometimes we say that highly biased, highly, or uh, so what is the concept of this bias and overfit, or bias and variance? The more uh, combined or the together that go is pair is the bias and variance. So what is this bias and variance concept or overfit and underfit concept? Suppose in the figure one, here, this one, okay, the purpose is to fit a cord to a given set of patterns. So here these blue are the sample patterns, and we have taken only two-dimensional pattern. It can be three, it can be n dimensional. So to show up only we can, it is easy to have the analysis in two dimensions. So x and y are the two parameters that defines the sample, and these are the blue dots, blue samples points are here, and the goal is to fit a curve. The simplest curve is a straight line that can be defined only with two parameters. So, with these two parameters, if I define a straight line, we'll find the gap between this fitting, that is this straight line, and the point, that is a huge gap. And we can say that at the end, we'll have a lot many error. Okay. So, if the error is high, then I say that it is uh, bias is poor, or it can be underfit. It is an underfit model. So if I take a polynomial fitting instead of straight line or the first order polynomial, if I increase the degree to 4, so straight line is a first order polynomial. So if I increase this order, then we'll see that I am having a better fitting, but still there is some gap, minor gap is there. Okay. So red one is the true function, green one is the estimation or the prediction from the model. Now, if I increase this further, the degree of this curve fitting, if I take the degree 15, so here you can see that for these samples, each and every point is being fitted, and all these points are in this green line. That is the best fitting. However, this happens only for the training patterns. So if I consider again another test pattern, we may have that this test pattern. So always the samples are likely to have some noise. So we can say that in the test pattern also will have some noise. So though this green line is fitting to these stars perfectly, but when the training pattern or the real patterns will come, they may not fit to those real patterns. So again, we'll have some high error. So that is called the overfitting. So always the goal is to have low bias and low variance. That is the middle condition. So we don't want underfitting or we don't want overfitting. Now, when I speak about the validation, there are different ways for validation. Uh, so we'll not discuss much about this. So one of the ways is the n-fold validation, where the complete training patterns are divided into n subset. So n times the learning takes place. Every time one of these folds is considered as the training set, testing set, and rest of the things are considered as the training. There are many methods, bagging, boosting, so many methods are there. So we'll not discuss those things in detail. Now, this is the same concept of overfitting, underfitting, and optimum fitting. That is for the classification. In case of regression, it is again to have the exact value. It can be any real number of the parameters will be of real values. In case of classification, the outputs are integer values. So here it is the demonstration for two classes. The orange circles and the green cross are the samples from two different classes. So we cannot have a straight line which can classify all these orange dots from the green crosses. So we'll go for some nonlinear boundary, decision boundary. Okay, in case of overfitting, it will classify each and every pattern perfectly, but that may not work on the training samples. Okay. Some more terminology. I think this is the last one with the terminology. Then we'll go for the algorithms. So here it is how to evaluate the model. The model evaluation takes place by the parameters called the accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. So suppose it is a binary classification. So here I have shown this for a binary classification. Okay. In case of binary classification, I can say that there are two classes. Let the classes be the positive class and the negative class. So when I'm talking about two classes, the positive class predicted as a positive class is considered as true positive. Positive samples predicted as the negative are called the false negative, and likewise the negative predicted as positive are called the false positive. Negative predicted as negative are called the true negative. Okay, so we can say that all these statistics which is along this main diagonal are the right prediction. So that accounts for the accuracy. Okay, true positive, true negative divided by the total number of samples. Okay, that is the accuracy from the model. So uh, if I have uh, n number of classes, if I have, I think there are some questions in the chat box, but let me finish it and again I'll look at the chat box and answer to those questions. So if I have C classes, so instead of binary classification, if I have C number of classes, suppose here are the true classes and here are as they have been predicted. Okay. So all these diagonals y11, y2, y2, yc, yc, they are the right predictions. Okay. Again, these off diagonals here also, these are the right prediction. Okay. They are not in that class. But if a sample which is not from YC but as predicted YC. Okay. Again, a sample which is from the class YC but predicted as something different. Those are along this vertical and the horizontal dimensions. Now, what is sensitivity? In this, suppose it is a model which has been built up for some disease diagnosis. Okay, let us say it is for the cancer diagnosis, whether the tumor is benign or malignant. In general, we'll say that actually, if I have many people may not have this cancer, so that can be 900. So actual negative number of people is 900. Okay, and maybe only 1,200 people are having. Actually, truly, it is they have the cancer. Okay, so in this, we can say that if the person is not having cancer but has been detected as a cancer, okay, that is called false positive. Okay, here. And he has been started for the treatment for the chemotherapy and other things of the cancer treatment. Then that is dangerous for the patient. Similarly, if a patient is having the disease, is positive, but has been detected not to have the disease, okay, that patient is also in danger because he is not getting the right treatment. So if I see the overall accuracy, so here it is 875, here it is 100. So out of 975 has been detected accurately. I can say that the model is very accurate. But considering the uh, total number of positive cases, which is very less as compared to the total number of negative cases. So now we need more detailed analysis or more precise analysis to see that out of these 125 positive cases, how many have been rightly detected. Okay, so if it is only 100 have been detected and 25 are missed out, then that is also not acceptable. So depending on the application, sometimes we look for accuracy, sometimes we look for sensitivity, sometimes we look for the specificity. Specificity tells us about the how many have been falsely diagnosed, false negative. Okay, here. So this way we depend on what application is in our hand and which is the appropriate parameter. Accuracy comes when all the classes are properly balanced. Okay, if the classes are not properly balanced, then we look for the sensitivity and the specificity. The same, so this is called the confusion matrix. This kind of analysis is called the confusion matrix. So if the confusion matrix is whatever I have shown is for two classes that can also be extended for n classes, then accordingly the equations will change. Okay. Okay. So let me go to the queries little bit. I think let me check what are there in the theoretically. Can you say that if the gap between train set error and tested error is high, it can be said as high variance, and if the, yeah, somehow it is that way. Rohini, you are saying that the first day to start at 10:15. No, sir, I think there are some corrections and you have not seen the latest information which has been given to you. Anyway, okay. So let us continue our presentation. Okay. So here, uh, I want to make you to be familiar with the basic or the conventional machine learning methods. And these are only a few methods. There are many more powerful methods. But again, the learning starts from these conventional concepts. And these methods are also very powerful and can be considered as gold standards. So I'll just highlight and in subsequent slides I'll discuss little bit about these methods. So when we say that there are many machine learning methods, so first of all we need to compare these methods. We need to consider the strength and weakness and see that which of these methods is fitting to our goal or fitting to our application domain. So these methods are compared based on the their property which can be considered as the scalability. Scalability is having large volume of data. How uh, uh, we can handle this data while applying this kind of algorithm. And second is interpretability. Suppose we have some model, is it possible to interpret why I'm getting this kind of a model? Okay. So in terms of scalability, interpretability, then we consider about the concept of bias and variance. Then we also look at the how the algorithm, whether the algorithm supports the parallel computation, whether the algorithm is parametric in nature, always whether it can be handled by offline or it has to go online, the space complexity, time complexity, whether the algorithm can be generalized, it is linear or non-linear. So these are the many things which are considered while we decide which are the algorithms we want and which is the right algorithm for a specific application or a specific goal. So to start with, first comes the Bayes classification. Okay, always it is considered as the gold standard. It is a statistical learning method and the machine learning foundation, or it started with this Bayes classification. Okay, then comes some more models which are again based on the mathematical concepts, whether it is from linear algebra or it is from information gain or it is from Lagrangian optimization. Okay, namely it is the regression, decision tree, and random forest, support vector machine, or it is from the rule-based experience system. Okay, so these are fuzzy logic. Then we have also statistical learning, like hidden Markov model, Gaussian mixture model, and artificial neural network, which is based on the biological aspects of learning. Okay. So some of these, if you look at the which are on the left side, they are easy to interpret, which are on the right side, they are complex and interpretation is bit difficult. And the biological learning or the neural network, you don't know why the parameters are like this or why you get a model like this. And every time you do the learning, it is likely to have different set of parameters. So here we discuss some of these algorithms. First of all, as I say, the Bayes learning based on the Bayes hypothesis, we say that it is a probabilistic model. So it is to calculate the conditional probability of the occurrence of an event based on the prior knowledge of the conditions. Okay, that can be related to the event. So here it is a mathematical representation, that is PH of D. So here we consider that D is set of observation which is given as the input to the model, and based on this observation the model will produce something which is the output, that is called the hypothesis. So before that we need to know that probability of this hypothesis, that is P of H, how likely the hypothesis is to take place, and also we need to consider the probability of these observations and how are these observation and the hypothesis are related. Given the hypothesis, how likely we are supposed to get this observation. So this is the base formula, and based on this we also design some classification models. Okay, so in general, I can say that Bayes model is more suitable when the training patterns are high dimensional. So here are some examples where the forecasting, face recognition, diagnosis of disease, and finding out the spam email. So in case of Bayesian interference, first we have to take the prior belief, okay, and that is P of uh, H, and then we have to draw the probability of the evidence, okay. Then considering both the things, we have to take the posterior probability, that is the decision, okay. Here is again another example to make this concept more clear. Suppose we use this Bayes inference for classification of fruits. So now for the fruits, we have different features. Okay? I can consider the aroma of the fruit, the texture of the fruit, the color of the fruit, maybe the shape of the fruit. So these all these features can be considered as the features which are observed from the event. So these features are x1, x2, x3, xn. Okay. So now having a fruit with these observations, that is set of observation, or we can say that input x1 to xn, how I can say that whether it is an apple, whether it is a pear, or it is an orange. Okay. So here, this is the same concept. First, we have to see that the probability of this observation, we need to see probability of the occurrence of the fruits. Then what is the probability that given a fruit, these features appear, and putting all these three together, I need to see that whether it is an apple, it is an orange, or it is a pear. Now moving forward, again another example I have. So Bayes is not the only thing. The Bayes, the extension of Bayes concept appears in hidden Markov model. Okay. So here I have again taken one scenario where I say that the child is allowed to watch TV once a day, and it can be the channel 1, it can be channel 2. Okay, these are the only options. I'm making it more hypothetical, not the reality. So if the child is allowed to watch the TV once in a day through two channels, the channels can be a sports channels or it can be another entertainment channel. And then it is seen that after watching the sports channel, 80%, that is zero point 0.8, probability is zero point 0.8 times it appears to be happy, and zero point 0.2 times the child appears to be grumpy. Again, if it is channel 2, 0.6 times it appears to be happy, and zero point 0.4 times it appears to be grumpy. Okay. Now the question comes, having a sequence of observation, child is happy, grumpy, 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 happy, happy, grumpy. Can I say that what was the channel he was watching. Okay, that is a simple, it can be rule based. If it is happy, the probability of happy is zero point 0.8 for channel 1 and zero point 0.4 for channel 2. So I'll go for the maximum. That means he is more likely to have gone through the channel 1. If it is grumpy, then I can say that it can be the entertainment channel, and normally he doesn't like that, so it is the channel 2. So that is the simplest concept. So observe the sequence, predict the uh, output. Okay. What Bayer said that it is not only that the relationship between the observation and the event, but we can also consider in what frequency he is watching the channel. Suppose channel 1. So from channel 1, how frequently again he is shifting to channel 1. From channel 1, how frequently he is shifting to channel 2. On the other side, again channel 2 to channel 2, and channel 2 to channel 1. There is a transition. Apart from the probability of the outcome, what is the transition from channel 1 to channel 1 and channel 1 to channel 2? So there is two possible channels. So the transition table is a small one. So here if zero point 0.8 times it is on channel 1 and zero point 0.2 times it goes to channel 2. Similarly, after channel 2, zero point 0.6 times it goes to channel 2 and zero point 0.4 times it comes to channel 1. So if I take both the things simultaneously, and also we know that I have two options. So channel 1 plus channel 2, the probability of channel 1 and probability of channel 2 together is 1. So it is in the probabilistic way, so there are some limitations. So considering all these things, I can say that if I look at for over 3 days, there is a chance that in for 2 days the child has gone through channel 2, sorry, channel 1, and for 1 day the child has gone to channel 2. So with this concept, suppose it is for a period of 3 days, so 2 days for channel 1, 1 day for channel 3. And in this, here you can have the analysis. Out of this, how many times he is happy and how many times he is grumpy. Okay, so zero point 0.8, zero point 0.2. So if I take a 5, so out of this 5, it will be 4 times it will be happy and once it is grumpy. Okay, so that happens for 2 days. Similarly, for channel 2 also, it happened for uh, 6 is to 4. So if I divide this into 6 is to 4, so if 3 times he is grumpy, then 2 times he'll be happy. So together, out of this, I can say that 10 times it is happy and 5 times it is grumpy. So taking this condition into account, if I take the decision, then that becomes the Bayes rule, and from that, if I observe it is happy, what is the chance that it has gone through channel 1, or if I see happy, what is the chance that it is gone through channel 2. So this is the simplest expression to say that how the Bayes rule is better than the simple rule-based probability. Now, where comes the hidden Markov model? Okay, so it is again slightly complicated. If over a period of days, child has been observed through and has gone through a sequence of happy and grumpy stages. Okay, what did he watch? That is the first question. Second is what will be the next watch? Okay, so this is the scenario which normally comes in the applications like sentiment analysis. Okay, in natural language processing, robot localization, path finding, the robot is moving. So what are the path it has taken place and what is the next thing? Gene sequencing. So all this sequence modeling, okay, can be handled by having the hidden Markov model. So there we consider the concept of probability and relate it with the observation sequence. So with the observation sequence, we compute some probability and also follow the logic based rule, that is the maximum a posterior probability. So that is why, so this there can be a complex algorithm behind it, that is the Waterby algorithm. So where we follow always the maximum. So these are the computations. So right now I'll not get into the mathematics to show that how these computations come, but always the sequence will be to go through the maximum of the two possible conditions. So here only I have the happy and grumpy, that is a two possible combinations. There can be more also. So that way the algorithm can become more complex. So here considering the two conditions only, this can be the path. So having the observation sequence, we can get the event sequence. Okay, that is what the hidden Markov model is. So it is again extension of Bayes rule. Regression. So more detail of regression we'll be considering subsequently. But again, regression is also a very established concept. Linear regression, logistic regression, multinomial regression. So these are the different types of regression. Regression is again, it can be resolved by having statistical models. So the best model is the least square method, where we say that the goal is to select the parameters. So if x1 to xn are the inputs, y is the prediction. Okay, then we have to select the parameters of the model, that is a1, a0, a1 to an. Okay, so the simplest way I can say that I get this. Suppose this A is the matrix consisting of these parameters. Here I get n simultaneous equations. If I put them these equations in a matrix form, I get A is equal to x inverse y. That is the simplest way of doing it. But the problem is when the size of this or the number of equations is too large, computing the inverse is computationally very difficult. And second, also not necessarily that always this will be a square matrix so that I can get the x inverse. If it is not a square matrix, x is not a square matrix, that means the number of samples and the number of features. So x1, x2, xn, these are the features. If I have some different number of samples and different number of features and it is not a square matrix, then we look for the pseudo inverse, and there are many different ways. So linear regression can be for fitting a straight line. Then it is also called the logistic regression. Precisely, it is for classification, where we put some threshold and say that if it is more than this, that is class 1, less than this, that is class 2. It can be a polynomial regression. Instead of having only the linear inputs, we can have the polynomial relationship. So there are again machine learning methods to solve this. There are machine learning methods, like those are called the tree-based learning, decision tree. This is also very popular, which are basically entropy or the information gain based. These are again easy and non-parametric methods. In case of regression, we found that it was a parametric method. We have to compute the parameters of the model. Decision tree, and also there is another tree-based algorithm that is called the random forest. Okay, so these two are non-parametric method. So for the non-parametric methods, what we do that, suppose the simplest in a layman way, I'll just give this example. Suppose I have a tree and the goal is to pluck the fruits. So what we decide, we need to look at the quantity of fruits and also the quality. Okay. And simultaneously also age of access. So if in a branch, I see that I have huge amount of fruit, but they are not of good quality, I may not consider it. Similarly, if I have bunch of fruit but of good quality, but it is not easy to access, then again I may not consider, because I cannot access that thing. So what I'll see where I can compromise between the quantity, between the quality, and between the access difficulty. So it may be the decision may be in favor of the fruits which are of good quality, maybe of a small number, but I can access those things easily. So these are many things we consider in modeling also for and for machine learning applications. So first of all, we need to simplicity, easy to interpret, and sometimes we also prefer the non-parametric methods because the parametric methods may have confusions or trade-off between the bias and variance. Okay, so here it is the concept based on the information theoretic. So another example also I have given here. Suppose nowadays the use of mask is compulsory. Okay, so it depends on, suppose I say that whether I should use the mask or not. The first question comes, where am I located? The place. If I am at home, I may not. If I am at work, then consider the second feature, whether I have people around me. So if I have visitors, even if I am home, it is yes. If I have visitor and I have no visitor and I am home, then it is no. So depending on different features, I take the decision yes or no. So these features, how to select this, which feature is more powerful than the other features. We start a tree diagram by taking that powerful feature and subsequently keep on branching on this to get the final decision, which is in terms of yes or no. Okay. So to calculate which feature is powerful, we consider this formula of entropy or the information gain. On the other side, random forest, instead of having a single decision tree, the establishment of random forest, it constitutes all possible such tree diagrams. Okay. So why so? Because it may happen that in a particular sample, suppose this place information is missing. Now, how to deal with that particular sample? When there are samples with some features, not necessarily that all the samples will have all the features. It is likely to have some of the features missing for some samples. So how to deal with those samples? That is one thing. Second thing is sometimes these information are prone to noise. So once the noise is there, and considering that noise into account, I'm comparing these features that may lead to wrong decision. So random forest is another solution for this. Instead of having uh, pre-decided information gain or pre-decided entropy calculation, if we can constitute all possible tree diagrams, then take the decision from these tree diagrams and cast the voting from the trees to take the final decision. Okay. This is the most powerful method for what we're discussing in the machine learning. Even sometimes this is also considered as more powerful to artificial neural network. That is called support vector machine. Okay. So here we take the example of classification. Suppose first of all, if it is the uh, body mass body mass index, okay, and here the purpose is to decide whether the person is obese or not. Okay, use this index towards the obesity. Okay, so in this obesity calculation, the best thing is to put the margin. Okay, and the margin ideally it should be halfway between the class. Okay, so here if I have the margin here, the green line, okay, that may not be the right margin. That means subsequently if I get a sample which actually is low obese, but it is falling on the right of this margin and can be considered as high obese or as the obese. So ideal way is to keep the margin at the middle. Okay. There can be concept of soft margin. That means if the classes are not exactly classifiable or we cannot classify them into two categories, there are always some error and we need to accept some error and we say that that is error is within the tolerable margin. Okay. So when I allow some samples of class A to fall in class B or class B to fall in class A, suppose here one green one, this is the outlier for the class 1. And similarly, this hidden, this can be considered as the outlier for this class 2. So considering or allowing this kind of error, if you do the margin, that is called the soft margin. Okay. So in case of support vector machine, the two concepts, first is we have to keep a margin halfway between the classes. Second is we have to allow some kind of error, and that error is called the sub margin with that error is called the soft margin. Now, it is again based on support vectors. What is the concept of support vectors? Suppose I have the patterns. Let me take another thing. Yeah. So these are the patterns from class 1. These are the patterns from class 2. Okay. So ideally, when you say that margin is here. Okay. Now, the challenge is if I can recognize these patterns which are close to this margin or these patterns which are close to the margin, then I'm done, because if these margins or the samples can be recognized, obviously the samples which are far away from this margin, they can also be recognized accurately. Okay. So the samples which are close to this margin are called the support vector. So one of the advantage of this uh, support vector machine is the complexity of this algorithm depends on the number of support vectors. Okay, so as long as the number of support vectors are less, even if I keep on adding samples which are far away from the margin, okay, that will not matter, or that will not affect the complexity of this algorithm. So support vector machine is again ideally is a linear classifier. It is for the two classes, but we can again interpret this to one versus all and use this one for multi-class. So here are some mathematical equations that is towards optimization, or that is the Lagrangian optimization concept. So here taking this decision boundary is at the middle. So if I say that class 1 is um, tagged with user 1 and another class is with -1, then in between I have the 0 that identifies the decision or the class boundary, or that is the uh, boundary between the two classes, and the distance. Suppose the class begins here and another class begins here, the gap between this is called the margin. So here we have to consider two concepts. First is we need to keep the margin large. Okay. So again, here is the equation that says that my margin is again dependent on this parameter W. So the moment the W is low, I can say that the margin is high. Okay. So we get the Lagrangian optimization equation. Okay, that looks something like this. So the support vector again considers this, and again it is quadratic equation. So we have to differentiate this, and the differentiation will lead to the values of W and bias. Okay. So it is uh, quadratic optimization with some constraints. So I'll not again go into the mathematics of this one. Okay. By default, support vector is a linear classifier, but there is a kernel trick that says that support vector can also be useful for nonlinear classification. For example, if I consider the patterns x1 and x2, okay, and suppose these are the values of x1 and x2. Instead of looking at only x1 and x2, I can apply some other operations on these. Suppose these are the operations I'm considering: x plus y, x dot y, x square, y square. Then I try to classify these values. Okay. So if I say, so out of all these, this may not work, this may not work, this may not work. But if I consider this one, okay. Now it is easy to classify the patterns P2 and P3 from the pattern P1 and P4. If I say that P1 and P4, that is 0, 3 and this is 3, 0, here these are from class 1 and these two are from class 2. So we cannot have a linear straight line or a straight line which can classify these yellow dots from the red dots. But if I take a function that is this, that is called the kernel function, then it is easily, I can have a straight line, I can have a decision boundary, which is called the hyperplane, which can classify these patterns. Okay, so this is the demonstration where these yellow patterns are now moved up with the value 2, and these green patterns are now below that at 0. So ideally what I am doing is, in this case, originally the patterns are having 2 dimensions. Now I am adding one more dimension to it. Originally this was x1 and x2. Now with x1 and x2, I am having the third dimension. So when I plot all the 3 dimensions together, by increasing the dimension, the patterns are more away from each other. So we can classify these patterns. Okay. So kernel tree can also be looked upon. So whether it is simply a dot product or it can have any other functions. So it can be again looked up as a kind of Gaussian mixture model. So where these patterns can again be shifted, that is called the kernel trick of radial basis function. Okay. So if I, instead of having the dot product, if I take the radial basis function to transfer these patterns and then try to classify it, I can get some better analysis. Okay. So this is all about support vector machine. Subsequently, we'll see some applications of this. Now, what are the challenges? So next two slides, I'll just conclude it. So machine learning challenges. It is not easy. Machine learning is having lot many requirements. Okay, first of all, always the handcrafted features are not sufficient. They may not assure for generalization. So if I create a model to deal with a set of handcrafted features and subsequently I'm getting a different set of features, maybe from the same application scenario, but there is a gap. So my model may not fit well. Okay. Next is complex model. So as the manifold or as the complexity of the application keeps on increasing, then the real-time applications may not be possible if my number of parameters, the kind of model I am using becomes too complex, then may not be possible for real-time computations or it may not be deployable for real-time applications. So that way, there are many terms adaptivity. Whether I'm having a model for now, during the time as the time progresses, whether the model will be that much robust, or again you have to train it, or again we have to consider it for different set of parameters, or again do the training. So those are different challenges of machine learning applications. So one of the solutions for this is neural network. We say that yes, it is adaptive, yes, it is generalized, yes, it is more robust. But again, the drawback of the neural network, there can be different models, neural network models. But again, the drawback of neural network model is it is not interpretable. We cannot know why the parameters are like this, and if I change one of these parameters, what will be the impact on the output. So the last but not the least, let me summarize. So here I have, again I say, I just take the summarization out of my experience. Again, it is not a gospel. So it is just a field of experiment, machine learning. There is no end. We can start learning. There is no end. Keep on experimenting, and the experiment along with the experience, okay, counts a lot. And it is not a philosophy, there is no hard science or there is no hypothesis or theorem to support it. Okay, so as we discuss different model, okay, we can group them in different categories and they can be compared in different ways. We spoke about linear and logistic regressions. We said about base concept, we said about decision tree, and also there is an algorithm that is called the k nearest neighbor. Okay. Similarly, we have the concept of ensemble, something getting multiplicated right by again and again. Suppose the decision tree, multiple decision trees, that becomes the random forest. Gaussian model, or the base that multiple Gaussians, that becomes the Gaussian mixture model. Then the hidden Markov model, these are considered as the ensemble models. And also we spoke about SVM and the kernel trick. Okay, there can be more complex models, and also we spoke about little bit about the artificial neural network, where comes the multi-layer perceptron and deep neural network. So keeping all these models in different classes, these can be compared based on their features like linearity, their powerfulness, their easy to use, scalability, plug and play. So if I consider all these things, some of these models are linear, okay, regression, maybe the SBM, maybe, yeah, these two can be considered as, yeah, also decision tree can be considered as the linear models. Otherwise, artificial neural network, this hidden Markov model are theoretically nonlinear models. Then, depending on the robustness, some can be powerful and some can be considered as weak model. What is more important is scalability. Nowadays, the target is to deal with enormous or large volume of data. So when you have large volume of data, so then the requirement is to keep this big data along with the machine learning. So there we try whether this big data and the machine learning algorithms go hand in hand, or they are not matching to each other. So now this is the big challenge. So whatever algorithm comes, we need to look at the scalability of the algorithm. So those support vector machine was considered as a very powerful model, and I think during the 90s up to 2000, middle of 2005, support vector machine was being used and tested for many of the applications, and there are many publications to claim that the result from support vector machine is better than the artificial neural network and obviously other machine learning algorithms. But support vector machine, the drawback is if the number of support vectors increases, then dealing with this algorithm is difficult. As long as we don't have support vectors, if the samples are inside the and at a higher depth inside the class, then there is no issue. There is no change in the complexity. So depending on again the scenario, we need to decide what is required, and accordingly the machine learning algorithms are compared. Okay. So this is all about from my side. This is just an introduction, very basic things, nothing new. Many of you may be knowing it, but I thought it was essential to trigger this faculty development program and to um, give a common idea that what is this FDP about. Now, any question anybody wants to share, now the participants are welcome to for discussion. Any queries from you can unmute and ask. I see in the chat box, I don't think, yeah, somebody is asking, is there no topic on bioinformatics? Yes, there are topics on not bioinformatics exactly. Biomedical image processing, I can say. Bioinformatics, no. Attendance, attendance will be automatically taken to this Google Meet app. Okay. After this session, I'll get your attendance who all were there.
Excuse me, ma'am. May I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Ma'am, actually, I'm a MSc student, and the topic was written in the FDP that it is about computational biology, which means exactly the bioinformatics. That's why I asked the question.
No. It is not about bioinformatics because you can go through the brochure also. In the brochure, the topics were clearly mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, so basically, it was computational biology, na? That's why I'm asking about it. So,
I don't say it is